is the variables that are creating a lot of volatility, even though you say that it's not as volatile as it has been in the past. Are the actual variables that are causing the volatility this time likely to create more volatility into the future, or do you think that they'll level out?
Well, if we don't know whether this is just kind of a transition period that's just been a spell of rough weather one after the other, and things are going to suddenly improve. I mean, look at the weather. We went from too dry to potentially too wet overnight in Vietnam.
Except the temperature is going up significantly in a lot of places, whether
That
it's too
is
dry.
true.
Right.
That is very true. But then you have to say, okay, what can the industry do? What can science and technology do to help improve and have better yield varieties that aren't as susceptible to drought and to adapt to the climate?
This episode is proudly brought to you by Mapper Forward's workshop, It's Time to Become a Coffee Consultant. Learn how to diversify your revenue streams and create freedom from your day job while saying goodbye to that alarm clock forever by becoming a consultant within the coffee industry or directly to consumers who have shifted towards home brewing and home roasting. Protect your income from challenging times in the coffee value chain by taking this course today. Go to mapperforward.coffee/workshops or click the link in the show notes for details.
Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and sadly, this is the last episode of this series. I'm having a wonderful time speaking to you, Judy. And in this series, we've been talking about all of the things regarding all of the things that are happening right now. We seem to have covered a lot. But what in this episode we're going to be talking about is the future of what coffee looks like. And we ended the last episode with me saying that so many people, a lot of people have said to me that they have never seen the market as volatile as it is right now. And you say that, of course it has been, and it's been much worse. Why the disconnect? Why do so many people think it's never been this volatile?
Because maybe they've only been around the market for 10 years.
Okay.
And I've been around for 4 decades.
Okay. Well, they're people who...
It's an age factor here. You know, I wear proudly.
Well, and no one would ever guess that you've been doing this for 40 years. You don't look even slightly able.
Yeah, well, right out of the womb, right?
Right out of the womb, right. But the thing, I guess, that is my question, if we what does the future look like? There's 2 factors in this that I think that we haven't had before, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong here, but climate and labor are 2 things that have really been impacting the price of coffee over the last at least couple of years, let's say the last 5 years, but in a more concentrated way in the last couple of years, particularly across Central America, where people are migrating to the southern border of the United States. And in places like Africa, where we've got people that are just abandoning coffee altogether, actually, to grow eucalyptus and khat. And that's a growing phenomenon around the world. So how is it then, even though we may have seen this kind of volatility before, do you see the future of coffee being the same kind of way to navigate as before, or are we facing variables that are going to see coffee be increasingly more volatile?
Okay, so let's go back into the 1970s. You had prices that are higher than they are today.
Yeah, they're in the 3s.
Okay. Well, they went even higher. And, you think about the differentials.
Okay.
And when you consider that pricing, okay, and, inflate it where we are, okay, it was substantially higher. I mean, that was when in grocery stores in New York, they moved instant coffee in little glass jars to the front because little old ladies were stealing them. So,
Really?
yeah.
Damn. That's
I know.
gangster.
So, the thing is, though, that there's always going to be periods where something happens.
Right.
And there's going to be catalysts for change, and there's always going to be some solution or technology. Speaking of that, did I ever tell you about my brainstorm idea that I want patented? I shouldn't even be talking about it here, but my legacy has to be the Panama picker.
The Panama picker.
Panama
Tell
picker.
me about what the Panama
I live
picker
in Panama.
is.
So,
Yes.
New Yorker at heart, but live in Panama. And it's a device. So if anyone's listening and they want to help get this to market so we could save coffee producers and solve the labor shortages. Okay, this is my pitch right here.
Let's do it. Tell me.
It's a a device that can work for steep slopes and solve a labor problem, pick it, peak of perfection, and that's replacement of labor.
Do you have a prototype of this? Okay.
And I was napkin over here.
Okay. If you get a prototype built, I'll put you in front of the right people that will invest the hell out of that.
Yeah, well, I've spoken to some robotics people and this and that, and life kind of like throws me in different directions, and but it's there.
Well, once you get it built, remember I live in Dubai, and there is a lot of people that come to me and say, "Do you know anyone who could solve this problem in coffee?" So, so you get the first one built, and I'll help you get the backing on that. That won't be a problem.
So in any case, so when there's crisis, people can either exit or rise to the occasion. And I think that you have to look at Brazilians who, when the chips are down and there's problems, they become even more efficient. And one thing in terms of pricing, and we sort of said, well, what was the price, in the 70s? And I said it was higher. One thing that you have to remember in terms of pricing, and people never do this, is that they're comparing the price per pound.
Okay.
But look at Brazil. Brazil is growing 4 times more per hectare, denser plantings, and higher than 25 years ago.
Okay.
And therefore the income per hectare is greater. If you have higher yields, then you're making more money on the same plot of land. And therefore, even though the price per pound might be less than what you were getting previously, your earnings, your income is greater because you have higher productivity.
As long as you're getting rain. Right? Like,
you said that with such a straight face.
All of that goes to shit if there's no coffee at all. And this is my point. Like, climate, look, I'm hearing very well connected people in Brazil telling me that the biggest farms are now having no choice but to irrigate.
Right.
They can't risk the rain's not coming. And that is a very expensive endeavor to irrigate.
Well, there's also laws, and so it's not only that, but getting the approval to be able to put the irrigation systems in, and is there adequate water? So that all becomes part of it. Right.
So what does happen? Like, going back to the question, is the variables that are creating a lot of volatility, even though you say that it's not as volatile as it has been in the past, are the actual variables that are causing the volatility this time likely to create more volatility into the future, or do you think that they'll level out?
Well, if we don't know whether this is just kind of a transition period that's just been a spell of rough weather one after the other, and things are going to suddenly improve. I mean, look at the weather. We went from too dry to potentially too wet overnight in Vietnam.
Except the temperature is going up significantly in a lot of places, whether
That
it's too
is
dry.
true.
Right.
That is very true. But then you have to say, okay, what can the industry do? What can science and technology do to help improve and have better yield varieties that aren't as susceptible to drought and to adapt to the climate?
Right. And this is where the volatility comes in, right? If we don't have, for example, World Coffee Research is doing a lot of work on trying to find genetic mutations to coffee trees that are leaf resistant and leaf rust resistant and drought resistant. The challenge that they've been having, if I understand the situation correctly, is that they can get them to the F1. So that means generation 1. So when they create the first generation, that survives. But they're having a problem getting it to the second generation. So if we can solve that problem, then that works great. But if we can't solve that problem, that adds to the volatility, doesn't it?
It does, but I'll give you some examples of different things, okay? And I cover different markets.
Yes.
So there was a time where Soviet Union fell apart and Cuba was getting very steep prices for sugar. Differential, the premiums that they were receiving from Russia for that sugar were astronomical. And Cuba was one of the major sugar exporters in the world. And so if Cuba disappeared from production, they went from 8 million to 1 million.
Oh, wow.
Okay, and all the old mills shut down. And there were issues with electricity, and the industry basically fell apart. The sugar market never really climbed in response to that because Thailand took over and planted more and substituted for the Cuban sugar. And the market never really missed that Cuban sugar, sadly, because Thailand became the larger producer. So are there other origins that are going to be able to replace and adapt because now their climate is better and more conducive for growing coffee?
Okay.
And there's areas that will be able to grow more. Price is a big incentive. I look at, one of the harder challenges is sometimes how to combat disease. Okay, and this is the problem that the cocoa market faces right now because of swollen shoot disease and black pod, and a lot of it comes down to mealyworms. It really does. Okay. And there's no cure. And you look at, and we talked about before we started recording about the Florida citrus industry and what's happened there. And you went from 242 million boxes in Florida of, 90-pound box, of oranges to only producing 18 million. And Brazil and Mexico grow more oranges than Florida. And so the crop is almost wiped out, and you don't have the land anymore because it went to Disney and to shopping centers and alternative uses. And so how is the market coping? And the sad reality on that one is that demand has been decimated.
And that seems to be what a lot of people are talking about in coffee right now, that as their farms are getting abandoned or succession plans are not being fulfilled, it's just getting sold to property developers, or it's getting sold to fun parks, or the land is being consolidated by big corporations and it's being used for other ag.
Right. Well, you see that development. You see it in Mexico. It used to be a much larger coffee producing country, and some of the areas grown to coffee no longer are. Land gets expensive, and there's competition not only with other agricultural crops. And a number of years ago, when I was doing some farm tours in Brazil, there was a lot of coffee that was going to soybeans. That stopped.
There was a lot of coffee that was going, the land was being
the
transferred.
land was
Right.
switching over because soybean prices were really attractive, and it's a cash crop, and you get the money in 5 months.
Right. Instead of waiting a few years for it to.
Right.
So what does the future look like for coffee if we were to say on a 12-month horizon and a 5-year horizon and a 10-year horizon?
Well, first, I'll still be around, and I'll still
Yes,
write
you will.
my reports, and we'll still be doing these
Yes,
podcasts.
we will.
So, as much as time marches on, some things are going to stay the same, right?
You
Our
better believe
friendship's
it, lady.
Our friendship's going to endure, and here
Yes,
we
it
are. and
will.
we'll be like,
Yes, it will. You're not going to get
I'll
away
just have
that
to
easily.
recycle some of these because there'll be new players in the market who don't understand all this stuff.
Yeah.
But no, on a more serious note, the market's going to have to adapt. As simple as that. And there's going to be, look, there's some technologies. There's going to be plantless coffee and clonal varieties, and losing. You have non-chocolate chocolate, and you have sugar substitutes. I mean, that's the reality sometimes. I mean, and just putting it bluntly, that can happen. If you can't grow it, some people might, do it in labs and, sort of hydroponics. I mean, that there's things that can't be predicted from that regard. There is going to be some farms that are going to not be able to continue as they did for generations and generations. And to me, that's really sad. And, you could travel around now and say, boy, that used to be a farm, and that used to be a farm, and now it's a strip mall. And, is progress really progress? And it hurts. Hopefully the industry can be innovative enough and partner enough. I mean, it has to be, to me, the solution isn't just what are governments doing, what are scientists doing, what are producers going to do who are in trouble, but it has to be working hand in hand, the entire supply chain, to help to solve this, because it's the only way that coffee is going to be able to continue to meet the needs of consumers with the qualities that they want.
Do you think specialty becomes a better value proposition than commercial over the next 12 months?
It might take a little longer. It really depends on what happens with the Brazilian weather in the next 6 weeks.
Okay.
I mean, that's really the bottom line, because it might be that prices have to creep higher here for a little bit until it actually rains. If everything is okay with that crop, despite all the irregularities that occurred, then, the market will be able to let off some steam and prices will come back down. And that should help to firm up differentials. And then maybe a return to specialty coffee. But I want to say something else here.
Please.
There's a lot of other problems in the industry, and some of them are self-made, some of them are lifestyle changes. So let's talk about, people are going back to offices now, okay? But are companies going to continue to pay for office coffee service? And so that's one thing. Look at the backlash that sort of the Starbucks model, where, they went away from that coffee is a social beverage. But then it became, we want it faster. We have single serve appliances, so the kitchen sink consumes much less. And so technology on the part of equipment manufacturers killed the golden goose for producers. They sell coffee by the bag, and people drink it by the cup and by the pound. And if you're not wasting, okay, so my generation, my parents' generation, okay, my father used to make tons of coffee all day long when he was home, and he would sit on the kitchen table, and it would be, say to my mother, can you pour me another cup? And, that one gets dumped out. So he was making 10 cups a day, probably drinking 2. You don't have that anymore.
No. And the price of a coffee and the way that people are engaging in coffee is shifting. It's Here in Dubai, the standard price of a latte is the equivalent of $9 American.
Wow.
That's the standard price of a latte here. And that's not a 16-ounce latte, folks. That's like an 8-ounce latte. So we've got consumer behavior is shifting, and people are becoming sensitive towards, okay, I can't drink three lattes in a cafe anymore. I am going to probably drink 2 or 3 a week in the cafe, and the rest I'm going to brew at home. And when I brew it at home, because my coffee's not cheap, I'm going to be making sure that I only brew enough that I'm going to drink so that I don't waste anything.
That's single serve appliances and the efficiencies. And so there's this tug on, the demand side, and it's been happening for a long time, where the appliances are getting more efficient and bringing that better cup, and more people have them and have access to appliances, and that reduces demand on a bag basis. People will still say they drink the same amount, but they never count how much they're wasting. Right. And I'll tell you what else is really, really detrimental to coffee consumption. Zoom calls.
God, I can't wait to hear this. What do you mean?
I mean, where's your cup of coffee? We've been on the phone for 2 hours.
I'm drinking tea. It's also like 8:30 at night here on a Friday night. So,
so we're, we don't talk about that. But the thing is that when we're on calls, hardly anyone is drinking coffee. But if we were in an office and we were face to face, then they're going to, as hospitality, serve coffee, whether you're drinking it or not.
Right.
And if you're having face-to-face meetings, you're going out, you're going to go and have a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And you might not count that, and you say, I'm a 2-cup or 3-cup a day drinker. But you don't count all those extra cups for when you're socializing, because they're not regular. They're not part of your normal routine, but they sure add up to a lot of coffee worldwide.
I still think that things are going to change. People are becoming price sensitive. They're not becoming price sensitive. Since the pandemic, they've been price sensitive. And I think that they're going to get more price sensitive, and they're going to be aware of how they won't stop drinking coffee. They will shift their behavior as to how they do it. So they may drink it out with people. Yeah, 100%. I have one last question for you.
Only one?
I know.
Coming to an end.
It's the last episode. We could do 10 more episodes and still not run out of stuff to talk about. But I want to ask you if you would mind making a prediction. And it's a specific question. In this cycle, what's the top of it?
Oof. Well, that depends on the weather. So, I've got to dust off my crystal ball here and put my meteorologist hat on. And I will tell you that the market will probably panic and drive prices higher, and maybe unnecessarily, or can't say not unnecessarily, but that fear factor will make people say, you know what, we need to either extend our forward coverage or be prepared that prices might stay higher longer. There's going to be issues for another year getting supply because of the irregularities in the climate for the 2 top producers. For Brazil, this extended dryness. I mean, the little frost scare that we had was nothing. It's really the dryness and the continuation of the high temperatures. And Vietnam flipped from being too dry to too wet. And if that continues, then that could be problematic also. So, let's speak about something that we didn't, as, we sort of wrap this up. Is the industry having a problem here because there's such dependency on 2 major producers and then a few secondary producers? And I hate to call them secondary producers because they all produce phenomenal coffee and shouldn't be considered second, but we're only talking in terms of the volume. not in terms of quality and desirability. Okay. But in terms of volume, you have Brazil that has potential, if everything is great, to produce 70 to 75 million bags or more coming up, because there is going to be, we have the incentive now to increase that productivity. And Vietnam certainly has more incentive to grow coffee over durian now. And durian actually takes more water. So that might see some switching back. And so I think we have to look at it from, yes, we might have enduring high prices for a bit longer, but the best cure for high prices is high prices. Always is. And there's always going to be that ultimate downturn where there's going to be the year or 2 year stretch or a 10-year stretch of phenomenal weather and increased productivity spurred by these higher prices. And so the industry needs to be prepared that when there's that death spiral lower and laws of supply and demand work, okay, then how are producers going to cope as they did before? What are they going to do to be prepared? Are they going to be properly hedged? Are they, accounting for that? Or are they going to overproduce as they've done many times before? I don't think so. I think that there's some barriers to that. And, the elephant in the room is what's going to happen with EUDR. And how is the industry going to handle that? We didn't even touch upon that can of worms here.
No, we'll have to do a whole other series on that because that's fascinating. But you didn't answer the question. You didn't tell me what you think the top is going to be. Then let me make it easier. Okay. Do you think it's going to – go ahead. If you want to answer.
So if it's just the weather forecast for Brazil stay dry for another couple of weeks, then, does the market climb to 250, 260 in that range? If the rainfall is late or there's a weather problem, then do we go back to $3? If there's no weather issue in Brazil and everything is fine, and the Vietnamese crop looks healthier because of the rain, as opposed to that being another trigger, we'll be back under $2.
Wow. Okay. I really appreciate that.
It's a wide range because it's a lot of uncertainty and scenarios that come into play here. Now, we cannot say, this market will never be under $2 again, and prices are going to stay at these levels where everyone is making money. The reality is that green light is on for spurring production increases right now. And at some point, the brakes have to be applied to stop it. And the brakes have to be applied quickly, or you're going to have such overproduction. And we've also slowed demand that we can wind up, in that backslide in the down cycle.
Well, it seems like the only certain thing in the near term is uncertainty. Until
That's always the case.
Yeah, right. It's fucking coffee, of course. Thank you so much, my friend. This has been a wonderful series. I know that I'm going to get flooded with messages of people saying thank you for having Judy on. So on behalf of everybody, thank you for what you do for our industry. We're all very grateful that you exist, and we're all very grateful that you share your knowledge with us here on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
No, it's always my pleasure. You know that.
Thank you. Could you tell people where they can find you?
Sure. On a 747, 787, somewhere.
On LinkedIn.
Well, hopefully Brink's nice to see you soon.
I hope so soon.
No, I'm easy to find. I mean, you could track me on X, former Twitter, or LinkedIn on, as my two social media platforms, or my website. Or subscribe to, one of my 5 reports that I published.
I'll have links in the show notes, folks. And Judy, will you do me the honor of signing off the series for us? You know what we sign off with, right?
Still been peanut butter. My favorite.
Have an amazing rest of your day, everyone. Thanks again, Judy. Bye.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon. And stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward.